Hello Tales of the Night community. Today we want to present you with a special episode. This week we asked if you had ever experienced any paranormal, terrifying, or unexplainable experience with your partner. And these are some of the most interesting stories you shared with us. Not all of them happened precisely on February 14th, but this is the perfect moment to tell them, and also to invite someone to listen to this episode with you. Whether it's your partner or someone you want to be your partner, everything goes. But now it's time to move on to something much less romantic. It's time to move on to today's stories. Ready? Turn off the lights. You're now listening to Tales of the Night. Hello community. With Valentine's Day approaching, I want to tell you about something my boyfriend and I experienced a year ago on this date. We've always had a strange fascination with the stories told on this channel. I love listening to them while drawing, but we'd never had a paranormal experience, although a part of us did want to experience something. So during a vacation, we took in a small town in San Luis Potosí called Huichihuayan. We asked a friend to give us a tour of places with that kind of energy. We were heading towards a cave where witchcraft is practiced. The uphill journey was very peaceful. On a narrow path, surrounded by trees and warm weather, we came across a stone fence with barbed wire. There, our friend told us we had to spit on the ground to leave our bad energies behind. We did so, and at that point, I was already starting to regret entering that place. On the other side, we found a figure carved into the hillside wall. I think my fear distracted me and prevented me from observing carefully. That figure looked like death or something dark like that. Below it were flowers and candles. Before continuing, we spoke to that figure. We told it we had no bad intentions, that we were only there because we wanted to learn. We kept walking, and what was once a beautiful landscape had turned into a cold place. The trees blocked out the sunlight. They became increasingly larger, denser, and the path grew narrower, so narrow that it made us walk in single file while we observed a river a few meters below. There we noticed there were some cats floating in it, black Tide bags, photos, dolls nailed to tree trunks. I was much more nervous at this point, but my real terror began when we heard a man speaking not far from us. We looked everywhere trying to find him until we spotted him among the trees. He seemed to have backwards knees and his body was contorting while saying things we couldn't understand. At that moment, we started running back down. But before crossing the wire, we thanked the painting at the offering for allowing us to pass, but especially for letting us leave. We spat on the ground again to avoid taking any energy from that place and returned to town. The most terrifying thing is that the story doesn't end there. When we left that place, that night I couldn't sleep. I felt something watching me from the window above my headboard. My friend told us he had been seeing lights like balls of fire, witches flying near his house. Days after our return home, I began having nightmares in which I relived our entire walk. But this time, that man would run down after us. I always woke up when he was about to catch us. My friend tells me that a week later, a witch tried to enter his house. He never explained how, or how he knew it was a witch. He just told me that. I hope you enjoyed this story, but above all, that you learned something from what we did. I have an experience that I lived through with my now fiancé. When we had just started dating, we hadn't even known each other for 2 months, since a friend had introduced us at a party. The click was immediate. We talked every day and went out 2 or 3 times a week. At that time, he had a job as an assistant, so his schedules weren't defined. But it was compensated with the free time he had, especially on weekends. The first time he was supposed to meet his friends, it was at a party downtown. However, when he picked me up at my house, he told me his boss had just called him. He had to go right then to see a doctor at one end of the city, and then go to the other end to deliver some medications. It was very important that he do it at that moment. He had to deliver them to his boss's mother. He told me he could do it alone and pick me up afterwards, or that if I wanted, we could leave that introduction for another day, as it would be several hours on that trip and he didn't want me to get bored. I told him I preferred to go with him, even if we didn't make it to the party. And so we went to that old doctor's office. There was a lot of traffic to get there, and when we headed to the other direction, even more. But we took advantage of it to talk. You know, since then, when we talk the most is when we're caught in traffic. We arrived at that address, a large house belonging to his boss's parents. They were very elderly. A young woman opened and asked him to come in, that someone inside would receive the medications. But then the young woman saw me, waiting in the car. "Have her come in too, please. Don't let her stay outside," she said. So I went in. The house smelled of wood, I suppose because of all the furniture and ornaments made of that material. It felt old. It felt cold. The young woman led my boyfriend through a room and up some stairs. I started looking around at all the figures there were. They were all religious, all made of wood. It looked like a church, I thought, though then I realized that not even churches would have so many figures. I walked through that enormous space until I reached the stairs. They were very wide, like in a soap opera house. I didn't see where they had gone. I wasn't sure at that moment if they had gone upstairs, and I could only wait. A door that opened caught my attention. Inside it was completely dark except for what little was illuminated by a salt lamp. That small light let me see to the back. It let me see that there was a man, a very elderly man, lying down, asleep, with an IV or something like that, connected to his arm. Someone passed through the door into that room. I saw the figure. The silhouette passed and went to position itself next to the old man as if checking him up close. I couldn't see clearly. I couldn't distinguish it. The lamp was extremely dim, and the little it illuminated was on the opposite side of the bed, the opposite side of where this person was with the man. It put its hand around that man's head. It seemed strange to me that it was so long, so big. The hand alone seemed to cover his entire head. The figure looked almost completely black. I couldn't distinguish any detail. Then it stood up, and from the position of its body I could see it was looking at me. I heard someone talking on the stairs behind me. My boyfriend, the young woman, and an elderly lady. She thanked my boyfriend, and they came down together. The young woman was a nurse caring for the man of the house. But that night, the lady had been feeling ill. She had been lying down all day. The medications were for her, because, from what I learned, for the man there was no remedy anymore. It's good to see more people around here. I can't stand the loneliness of this house anymore. The lady is always in her room upstairs, and me just here taking care of the man," said the nurse. "Are you alone?" I asked. "Well, alone with whom? I'm the only service person they have, and the lady never comes down anymore. I have to take care of him by myself." "Wait, why did you open that door?" she asked me, almost angry. "I didn't open it. There's someone in there with him. There's someone inside," I said. I noticed an immediate change in her, in my boyfriend too. The girl instinctively got behind me and told my boyfriend to go check, that there shouldn't be anyone there. No, it's something strange, really. There's a person in there," I insisted. My boyfriend walked towards that room, and we two, very close behind, walked after him. He went in and turned on the light. He checked under the bed. Only the sick man was there, asleep. Behind us on the stairs, we heard someone coming down very slowly. We couldn't see them. We couldn't see who it was because the room's wall blocked our view. All three of us heard how they came down, step by step. They were getting closer to us. We expected to see the lady appear at any moment at the bottom of the stairs, but we heard someone reach the last step and stop. The steps were extremely heavy. We took 3 steps forward to be able to see the stairs, and there was no one there. I ran out, and then my boyfriend. The girl stayed at the door crying, and we went back for her. We told her to come with us, that we would take her anywhere she wanted to go. But she said she couldn't leave her job, that she had to stay there all night. I hugged her and said she should call someone to stay with her. At that moment, my boyfriend looked through the door, took a few steps inside that house, and then came back. He told the young woman very seriously that she had to come with us. She firmly told us no, and thanked us for coming. She closed the door in our faces, as if fearing that insisting a bit more would have convinced her. My boyfriend didn't want to go to the party. He asked me from there to go to my house, to just be there. Without wanting to, without planning it. That night he met my mom because of that, and we talked with her for hours until it was almost midnight. When he realized the time, he apologized and left, but not before thanking me for that. He said that strangely it was precisely what he needed. My boyfriend lost his mother when he was a child, and I thought that's why he had enjoyed that night so much. That's what he meant when he said he needed it. But weeks later, when he told me that finally that man from the house had died, he told me that the nurse had quit after a few days. That night when we met her. "I never told you what I saw that night," he said. "When we were trying to convince her to come with us, I went to look again and entered the house because I wanted to convince myself that what I was seeing was real. I saw an elongated figure, like someone extremely thin, but just the silhouette. It passed from the stairs to the old man's room. It moved its arms very strangely, perhaps because of how long they were, and before entering the room it stopped and turned towards us. That's when I couldn't take it anymore and asked her, the girl, one last time to come with us." We had never seen anything like that before. We haven't seen it since, but this is a strange memory we talk about when people ask us about those first months of getting to know each other. Thank you very much for your attention. We continue here reminding you that to be part of us, to be part of the community, you just have to subscribe to this space so you don't miss any new story. And of course, if you really like them, only if you really like them, you can help us by sharing this episode with someone you feel needs to hear it. Now we're going to move on to a very, very powerful story, and we really thank Esmeralda and Chinas for trusting us enough to share it. We send you a big hug. You're still listening to Tales of the Night. I share with you this thing that happened in my house. Community. My bedroom has a large window that faces the front door, so when someone approaches to knock or comes to the front of the house, we can clearly see them. 2 years ago, we started experiencing very strange things. While my husband and I were in the bedroom with the children already asleep, we heard someone knocking on the window. My husband was standing, so he ran to open the curtain, but there was no one there. We looked at each other puzzled. He went out and checked, but there was no one. We lay down to try to sleep. But in the middle of the night, they knocked again. He got up immediately, and again there was no one outside. He was going to go out to check, but I was very afraid and asked him please not to do it. Thinking, of course, that there might be someone hiding who perhaps wanted to rob us or wait for us to come out to attack us. He couldn't stop looking outside. He pressed his face against the window, trying to notice any movement out there. In the darkness, in front of him, they knocked on the window again. We were frightened, like you can't imagine that night. The next night wasn't peaceful either. We were lying down watching television when we heard a crash in the house. We thought they had broken one of our windows, but when we got up to check, we saw that on the kitchen floor were the pieces of a huge glass bowl. We couldn't find any explanation for how it had flown from its place to where we found it. For 7 days, the knocks on the window continued. Noises in the house. They even knocked on our bedroom door. We always checked and never found anything. I couldn't stop having dreams that made me feel something bad was about to happen, that someone was going to die. Then Thursday came. That day we left the children at school, and since it was my husband's day off, we went for a walk on the beach. I told him about the dream I had been having those days. He told me to calm down, that nothing was going to happen to me. But that afternoon my father called me to tell me that my brother had died. They picked him up from his house, took him away, took his life and left him on the street without any identification. None of us lived near him. No one in the family realized. Since his body was listed as unidentified since the police found him, they took him to the medical examiner's office. He was there for 7 days, the same ones in which we had those manifestations in the house. I remember that with my husband 7 days before that, we saw the news. We saw that they had found the body of an unknown person. We saw the report on television. But here in my city, that happens every day. There was no note. It was, as they say, just another one. My father told me that he had also been having dreams similar to mine. Today we believed it was him, trying to get us to find him, warning us of his death. And as soon as we went to claim his body, the strange sounds in the house ended. The knocks on the window. The paranormal activity stopped completely. At least what we see. Because my youngest son started telling us that his uncle was there playing with him, and we would see him talking to my brother as if he were there, with total normality. Thank you for your attention to this story.